I was so disheartened when I found out that on February 9th, 2019, right after the Super Bowl, I think it's the day after the Super Bowl. Oh, the week after next season's Super Bowl. Okay. 1 week removed from this coming Super Bowl, next year's Super Bowl. The Super Bowl that will culminate after this season begins. There is a new football league being introduced, and apparently there's already TV deals in play. You're sitting there going like, oh, they got a TV deal for the XFL. No. The XFL, that is not set to debut until 2 years. So it's like a year and a half or so. Maybe a little more than a year and a half. But the XFL isn't supposed to debut until around February of 2020. The year 2020 is when the XFL is supposed to come out. I'm talking about 2019, a year before the planned launch of the XFL. The Alliance of American Football is launching. Already a shot at the XFL because the XFL doesn't actually stand for anything. It's X Football League, not EX, just the letter X and then football and then league, presumably. XFL doesn't actually stand for anything. At one point, it was the Extremely Fun League. Extreme doesn't start with an X. So you can't tell me that XFL stands for Extreme Football League or Extremely Fun League. None of that stuff. Extreme starts with an E. So it's definitely not extreme. It's definitely not exciting. It could be xylophone. It could be Xander. It could be Xanax. Xanax Football League. I don't. What else starts with an X? It could be like Christ Football League. Maybe they're trying to put the Christ back in football. Like Xmas, XFL, Christ Football League, something like that. It's definitely not extreme. But XFL doesn't stand for anything. White Owl Massacre is saying maybe it's the DXFL. Yeah, could be. Could be the DXFL. Alliance of American Football, the AAF. Letters actually stand for something, is starting in February of 2019. The reason why I am so upset about all this happening is because the person that's behind the AOAF, the Alliance of American Football, is none other than Charlie Ebersol. Charlie Ebersol is the father of Dick Ebersol. Dick Ebersol is the man who partnered with Vince McMahon to launch the original XFL. Dick Ebersol is the one that brokered the deal with NBC to get the XFL on TV. Dick Ebersol is also partnered with Vince McMahon on the Saturday Night's Main Event specials that were on NBC in the 80s. Dick Ebersol worked with Vince on the XFL. Charlie Ebersol is Dick's son. Charlie Ebersol most recently did the documentary, The 30 for 30, about the XFL for ESPN. Charlie got his dad, Dick Ebersol, and Vince McMahon back in a room together where they got together and talked about what could have been. The documentary about the XFL was fantastic. I thought Charlie Ebersol did a great job. It was certainly positive. It did feel very pro XFL, but to me, I thought it was a great story, and it was about time somebody had told the story of the XFL. I don't know what happened. I watched the XFL documentary, and even though it was a positive telling of the story, to me, it was still the story of a failed experiment. It was the story of something, one of the colossal, boy, that didn't work out stories. It was a, what were they thinking? Why would they launch another football league? They didn't have any of the rules. Like that's the message that I got from it. It was like we could reminisce about it. We could wax poetic about it. But at the end of the day, this was a bad idea. For some reason, Vince McMahon comes out of that documentary with all this talk about the XFL, and he insisted that the 30 for 30 had nothing to do with it. And I'm sure in the back of Vince McMahon's head, ever since they shut down the XFL, he wanted to reopen it because Vince doesn't like failures. And they even said in the 30 for 30 that the XFL, that Vince wanted to do a second season. Vince was trying his hardest. Even when the NBC was like, we're out, Vince was trying his hardest to get a second season done. It couldn't happen. Couldn't happen. There was no TV for it. So Vince leaves that 30 for 30 clearly influenced because on some level, it either got the idea back in his head or it made it stronger. It brought it to the forefront of his mind. Yeah, we got to do that XFL thing. Let's get cracking on it. Okay, I watched the movie. They said that the main problem was that we did it too quick. Didn't give the players any time to practice. We kind of threw it together. Okay, we're going to give it more time this time. We're going to give it a full 2+ years from the time of the announcement instead of whatever it was, a matter of months when the original one comes out. So Vince clearly comes out of the XFL 30 for 30 thinking this XFL was a great idea and it just needs another shot. Okay, fine. I get that it's his baby and he feels that way about it. He's not ready to give up on it. Okay. Charlie Ebersol leaves his own movie. If anybody's done research on the XFL, it's the guy who directed the 30 for 30. And he also decides that it's time to start a competitive football league to the NFL. It's time to start a second football league, a spring league, whatever you want to call it. What was going on that movie set that everybody there thought that the XFL was just ahead of its time and a great idea? Nobody outside that movie set was walking around going like, that really did have a bright, bright future. Nobody. But for some reason on the movie set, all the people that were closely associated with it are going like, we're going to start this football league. And I don't know if Charlie Ebersol reached out to Vince and said, hey, I want to be a part of this XFL thing. And Vince was like, hell no. But to see Charlie Ebersol, after he got Vince McMahon all excited enough to relaunch the XFL, to then try to undercut him, like Undercutter's Pizza, to undercut him and offer the nation a football alternative a full year before the XFL takes off. And it says that there's some recognizable names scheduled to be involved with the Alliance of American Football. I think XFL is a much better name than AAF. But AAF does have the advantage in the sense that their letters actually stand for something. It says former NFL manager Bill Polian will help Ebersol. The player side is going to be overseen by Pittsburgh Steelers safety Troy Polamalu. And Hines Ward and Justin Tuck are going to be involved, former NFL legends. It also says that there is financing from the people who finance Barstool Sports behind this thing. Whereas as far as we know, Vince just has Vince. Sold a bunch of his WWE stock, put the money in the bank, and then used the money he's going to launch a football league on his own. He doesn't have investors as of right now. And Vince has said that he's not going to have separate owners of the teams. That he's going to own all the league is going to own all the teams. It seems like a dirty play to me. Seems like a dirty play. It also seems absolutely insane. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you think that one additional football league is a good idea, that's one thing. Maybe you could argue the NFL's ratings are down. People are tired of football being so politicized. The whole kneeling before the anthem really hurt the game. You know, it's too slow. You know, Vince wants to speed it up. But two leagues is just crazy. Vince doesn't have the option of being like, oh, well, if Charlie's going to start his league in 2019, I'm just going to forget about the whole XFL thing. That's not fair. But Charlie, he decides a couple months after the XFL is announced as being relaunched that he's going to relaunch his own football league. Charlie, you got Vince McMahon to do an interview for your movie. Not an easy thing to do. You got Vince McMahon to take time out of his schedule to do an interview for your movie about his football league. Then you find out he's restarting his football league. Then you create a football league to compete with his football league. That's a dirty play. You could say that these AAFs or XFLs are not competing with the NFL because they're operating on a different time frame. They're not starting until the NFL season is over. They're saying, look, the NFL is the NFL is the NFL, but we're going to create this cool product over here. That's fine. But in 2020, it would appear if Charlie Ebersol's league launches and goes a second season, and if the XFL ends up actually launching, you could have two leagues competing with each other for spring football. Maybe it'll be better for both. Maybe everybody will get excited because they get to pick sides and figure out what's what. Maybe this is all some brilliant plan by both of them, that they both want to launch a league, but they're like, we need competition first. But if it's not some arrangement that they've worked out to just build publicity for spring football in general, then boy, oh boy, it is a dirty play. It is a dirty play, Charlie. And I like Charlie Ebersol. We had him on the show. I would have him on the show again. But it's not a nice thing to do. And maybe, you're not supposed to be nice in business. Fine. There are a million things you could do. Especially because a spring football league is about as far from a guaranteed win as you can possibly get. Like, that's something, if you're going to start an additional football league, you really, really have to want to start a spring football league. Like, this is not a thing that you just do because you're like, I really want to figure out a way to make money. I really want to figure out a way to get some people to pay me. What's a business I could start? Let's see. I could open a fast food franchise, but I don't know. With people's health concerns today, I could open a Jamba Juice, but there's so many Jamba Juices out there. Plus, there's all this competition. There's for other juice stations. Like, there's nothing proprietary. You're watching Shark Tank. There's nothing proprietary about a Jamba Juice, right? Because there's all these other juices. I could design a website where I sell drawings of cats. Nah, the guy was just on Shark Tank singing, I want to draw a cat for you. Nah, I can't do that. You know what I'll do? I'll start a spring football league. That should make me some bucks. No, you have to, for whatever reason in your soul, want to do it. Like, I have a passion for this. I've got the money for it. I really want to do it. Because otherwise, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. I don't mind anybody that does that makes business moves that are kind of insane because it's just something they have a passion for. I like people like that. I like eccentric billionaires and millionaires. If you're going to have a lot of money, if you're going to have more money than any individual could possibly use, be eccentric about it. Be Elon Musk and start launching rockets into space. Be Richard Branson and just put, neon lights on your planes for no reason. Turn it into a goddamn nightclub in your plane. Who cares? You're a billionaire. Have fun. If you're Warren Buffett, just start a chocolate company just because you like chocolate so much. What difference does it make? Who cares? If you're Bill Gates, I guess donate it all to charity. That's what he does for fun, right? But if you're Vince McMahon, who cares? Go out. I mean, if you're Shane or Stephanie McMahon, you probably prefer Vince just keeps his money in the bank. But go out, have fun, live a little, start a football league. But I don't know what Charlie Ebersol is thinking. He's got to go to investors. He's got to sell them on this thing. He's got to live up to expectations. It just seems like so much work for something that is such a huge risk. But look, I hope that Charlie Ebersol is successful. Because if Charlie Ebersol is successful, it'll open the door for the XFL to be successful, and then hopefully they can blow him out of the water. Because I would like that to happen. Because even though the American Football Alliance of America, even though Charlie Ebersol's league is starting first, XFL announced first. You got to give them that. XFL announced first. So technically, this is their idea.